Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutiny Programme Committee. To start off with apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Lyndon Jones and from Beth Allender. Do we know of any other apologies at all? No? Okay, thank you. Right, for the benefit of those who joined the meeting online, I'm going to ask the people in the Gloucester room to introduce themselves. So I'm Peter Black, I'm the chair.
Bridge Madaha from the Scrutiny team.
Robert Smith, Cabinet Member for Education.
Elliot King, Cabinet Member for Culture, Human Rights and Equalities.
Sarah Lackenby, I'm Head of Digital and Customer Services.
Councillor Andrew Lewis, Cabinet Member for Service Transformation.
Mark Jones, Councillor for Llansamnet.
Adam Davis, Councillor for Llwch Ward.
Councillor Wendy Lewis for Wynalaeth Ward.
Debbie Smith, Legal Advisor.
Good afternoon, Samantha Woon, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I ask if there's any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest at all? No? Okay. Item 3 is prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. No. Okay, so let's move on to the minutes of the last meeting. So there's two sets of minutes. One was the 1st of February, which basically we just agreed to postpone the called in item to the following meeting. That's on page 1 and page 2. And then the meeting of the 13th of February, which is on page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. Can we agree that those minutes are accurate? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, in that case, we're going to move on to public question time, which is item 5. There's been no questions have been lodged with us. So let's move on to item 6, which is the Welsh Language Standards Annual Report 22-23. Can I welcome Councillor Robert Smith, the Cabinet Member for Education and Learning, and Councillor Elliot King, the Cabinet Member for Culture, Human Rights and Equalities. Robert, you going to introduce this, or Elliot? Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just very briefly, so you have in the appendix the actual annual report. This covers the period 2022 to 23. As we know, the local authority has a statutory duty to comply with the Welsh Language Wales measure, and there are 163 standards that are in place across the 5 categories. And as part of that is producing an annual report which focuses on complaints, looking at the number of employees who have Welsh language skills and employees who've participated in training courses, and vacant posts, new vacant posts requiring Welsh language skills. So the report outlines all of those details and also outlines examples of actions that have been taken by the council under the different standards categories during the year, as well as looking at some data, and also outlines the complaints and the action taken against there. So I won't go into any further detail. The report is there, and as outlined in the report. So thank you, Chair.
Very much. Thank you very much indeed. Everyone will have read the report. So I'm going to go to Councillor Mike White, who's got the first question. Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is following a query from one of my constituents regarding signage in Welsh, bilingual signage in parks. In relation, we've got a park in my ward called Montana Park. Now there's signage on the road leading into the community centre, which obviously says Montana Park Community Centre, but in the park itself, there's no actual signage, like was pointed out to me, like in Cumlevel Park, Howard Park, Park Llewellyn, the other parks in my ward. I'm just wondering, was it council policy to have all signage within the parks area of the park? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor White. So I think so some of it really depends on when the sign was placed in the park, how long it's been there. So the policy has been that where a new sign is put or a sign is being renewed or changed, then at that point the text must be displayed in Welsh and English, and that's part of the standards. and there are things that describe how that text should be presented to ensure that the eye is drawn to the Welsh language first, etc. But I think it probably depends how long the sign's been there. I'm happy to happy to pick that with the Parks Department on your behalf if that's something, but I think that's really the standard as is outlined in the measure.
Yeah, if I can come back, Chair. If I can,
Yeah, please,
yes,
Mike.
Chair. Yeah, the actual signage, saying whether obviously just sort of highlighting the community centre, it's called Montana Park Community Centre. That sign is actually on the road going down. There's another sort of little side street that leads into the park, but in the park itself, there's no actual signage of saying the name of the park. So if somebody come in from another entrance, they wouldn't know what the park was called if they were obviously not living in the community.
This sounds like a site visit, Elias.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to pick up a conversation with you, Mike, around that.
Yeah.
We can see what the best approach would be.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. My next question, I'm just going to the letter which we sent back when we discussed this last time in May 23, and your response on 28th of June, which I think was from both of you actually. Yeah. When we asked about the cost of external translators as compared to in-house translation, and your response said further detail will be provided at a later date. Now, it's had a year, so I'm just wondering,
Yes.
do you have that further detail with you, or do you want us to put in the next letter which you could provide?
No, I think we've had, Chair, the information is 9 pence per word is the unit cost for the Welsh translation unit in 22-23, which I make out is about £90 per 1,000 words, which was the estimates that I used to work with. Now, commercial translators some years ago, I admit, but you're talking £50 to £60 per 1,000 words. So the internal service would look to be a lot higher than external, and I think there are reasons for it. I think the some of the work that's they're undertaking, the changes that are being introduced now, having a dedicated member of staff to manage the translation inbox, increasing use of translation software. I think all of that is going to assist to bring the unit cost down. What I would say, of course, is that with any kind of electronic translation system, it's not a panacea, because in many ways it changes the nature of the work rather than removing the nature of the work, because you need someone then to read, to go through any document, proofreading and having a proper editorial control of it. Otherwise, well, you can end up with all sorts of unfortunate, I won't go into examples, but I'm sure we're all aware of them, where machines have translated something and it makes no sense at all, or it's the opposite meaning or whatever. So I think that's why we need to be very careful how we proceed. But I think it is work in progress, Jen. I apologise that it's taken not quite a year, but 10 months to bring back the figures, Chair.
Okay, perhaps we could ask him for a comparison, how many words were done externally and how many words were done internally in the letter. Maybe that could be, I would have thought you'd have a record of that from the various contracts and the technology you do use for the translation. I also said, I think the last time my wife did external translation, which is some years ago now, it was about £50 to £60 a 1,000. But she also hates machine translation as well. But I'm going to come on to machine translation, actually, because I know the Senedd uses machine translation, largely because they have millions of words to translate for the record of proceedings. They do it through, basically, they run it through Microsoft Translate as opposed to Google, because they've upgraded Microsoft Translate, and then it's all proofread afterwards. And they reckon it's about a 20% saving on that. So to what extent do we use automatic translation at all in our processes?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. And the Welsh language unit is using the Microsoft Translator. So that system what they term the robot within in-house, to do that automation, which is run alongside the translation process, and obviously then that to aid the translation of the more complex documents, so that is then checked across and being corrected by translators before it's published. So that's, I think, where automation is being used. I think, generally, alongside the rest of the council, further options, to expand that are being considered all the time in terms of how we can automate translation. I think particularly for, as you referenced, Chair, for larger documents, then that's key to be more efficient.
I think the important thing is not to do it without proofreading, particularly when you're doing signs in Morriston, and also to ensure that when you translate, put a translation onto a sign in particular, that you check before it's actually put up, because often it happens in the publication. Okay, I just want to raise some issues in the report. I just noticed on 3.48. You say Zoom licenses have been procured for facilitators to enable simultaneous, interpretation, I call it. I understood that Teams actually allows for simultaneous interpretation. I'm just wondering why we're using Zoom at all, if you can do it through Teams. I know that we do the partner meetings always have simultaneous interpretation on using Teams. So just wondering why we moved to Zoom at all for that particular, seeing Zoom is not the standard and is not as reliable or as secure. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm not expecting to know the answer to this.
Yeah, no, I think we'd have to come back on that one. I certainly know from experience elsewhere that sometimes Zoom, so when I've attended conferences, in Europe, Zoom does allow for that multi-channel, and I'm not aware of the comparison with Teams. So certainly, absolutely, we can come back on that. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question I had on page 27 on the complaint details. The first one, complainant was unable to speak with the Welsh speaker in council tax despite selecting the Welsh option, and the response was no action taken. Just wondering, I would have thought we would need to apologise for that.
Yes, and I think we will be following that up, following the report, Chair.
Yeah, because clearly they have a right under these things. Okay, does anybody else have any questions on this particular report at all?
Yes, please, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I know a neighbouring authority uses Swansea's translation system, Neath Talbot.
It's a joint service.
Yeah. So do we get income from that, or is that something that's just an agreement between the both authorities? I decline interest as an employee of Neath Talbot Council as well, please.
Yeah, I think it's a joint service. Do you want to come in?
Yeah. Debbie.
Yeah, yes, that it's a formal joint arrangement. There's a contractual basis for the sharing of the service, and there's a recharge that's costed on use of the service.
It's one of the few joint services surviving from the Welsh Government's obsession with joint services, along with archives, if I remember correctly. Okay, anybody else? Adam.
Yeah, just to come back on to complaints. The third complaint down says a letter was sent from the bereavement service in English only, and the resident was told that was done to save money. And I appreciate that an apology was provided, and that's not the case. Obviously, there must be some sort of misconceptions somewhere down the line that Welsh might be cut aside to save money. Obviously, that's not the case. Are we working with our staff to make sure that any sort of preconceptions on our side are not sort of put out, so this misinformation doesn't sort of gain traction in the public awareness?
Yes, and to be honest, Chair, I was surprised that I saw that response had been given, and quite clearly it shouldn't have been given. And I can only hope that that officer is now being made aware of what he or she should have said, because that's not acceptable and it's not the policy.
Anybody else got any questions? I think on the third one, sometimes you want to ring the Welsh line just to get an answer because there's such a queue on the English line, isn't it?
Yes.
So, oh, Sue. Yes, Sue.
Yeah, just this annual report is available on the website and in council offices. Does that include the libraries?
Anybody? Elliot, yeah.
I think generally most reports are available for libraries, but again, that's something I can just check on.
Thank you.
I think it'd certainly be available online. So anybody goes into the library and goes online would be able to find the report there. Yeah.
Not
Peter May.
everybody is available online. Not everybody likes to use online.
Oh no, I
just
know.
put
Yeah,
that down.
I know. Peter May.
Thank you very much, Chair. On section 4, the report regarding education, I'm a governor on a Welsh medium education primary school. But I've noticed originally we used to have a translator in, and the primary language spoken on that Welsh medium primary school was in fact Welsh, and you put your headphones on for the English translation. I know, due to the advent of Teams and the pandemic, it makes it a bit more problematic. But since some governing meetings have gone back into the schools now, what's the sort of arrangement? Because the primary language spoken in these governing body meetings is now English.
Well, I can speak from my own governing body, both governing body where meetings are conducted in the medium of Welsh, and there is a translator present, and that is in every meeting of the governing body. I assume that's standard practice in Welsh medium schools. If not, I'm happy to discuss it elsewhere, Councillor May.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding is the translation service provides a simultaneous interpretation service for the schools on request.
Obviously the schools themselves would organise that.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to take that forward.
Is it charged or is it free, Cabinet Member?
I think that'd be worth looking at. Actually, I was going to ask the same. Is it recharged to the service?
Need to check whether it's provided centrally or whether the school, whether they recharge on the school. I think it's I don't want to mislead the meeting, so can I come back to that?
Yeah, I think that's useful. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, my understanding is we provide them, but I think whether there's a recharge, I don't know. No. Okay, anybody else got a question at all? No. Can I thank you very much for coming in and answering the question list, and we'll put all these questions in the letter for you, so there's a record for you. Thanks very much indeed. Okay, we're going to move on to annual complaints and complementary report 22-23. So we've got Councillor Andrea Lewis, the Cabinet Member for Service Transformation. She's supported by Sarah Lackenby, the Head of Digital and Customer Services. Andrea, do you want to introduce this report? We have already, of course.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I won't go into any detail, actually, because I do appreciate members have had the report in advance. And this is an annual report, so it's recurring, and we come here every year with similar issues, it feels. But this year is slightly different because we have altered the reporting mechanisms in line with requests from Governance and Audit Committee. But I would like to place on record my thanks. Hope that members of the Scrutiny Programme Committee will understand and appreciate that there are hundreds of thousands of interactions with the public every year. And this is a snapshot, a small snapshot in comparison of a number of complaints that we receive. Many of them don't move on to stage 2. They dealt with at stage 1. And there is a very, very small corporate complaints team that actually deal with all of these, who are doing an excellent job. So I don't intend to say too much because I know we've had the questions in advance, which has been extremely helpful. And so Sarah and I will aim to answer those between us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I noticed, and you haven't had this in advance, but this is an observation, that the number of stage 1 and stage 2 complaints have gone up from the previous year. I'm assuming that's because we've come out of COVID and people are interacting more with us. Yeah, okay. Right, Councillor Mike White, you've got a question on breakdown of complaints.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. My question is, looked at the number of complaints received. It is acknowledged that the corporate building and property services, highways and transportation, housing and public protection, and waste management and parks are the council's main frontline services, where it may be the case that these we get the most complaints, which obviously could relate to issues or circumstances beyond the control of that service. Why I say this, obviously, because we would get issues with perhaps when building services with voids or somebody's not there, or to let the workmen in, or you might within waste management services, you might have utility companies doing work in an area and vehicles can't get access to carry out the service. Would that explain why many complaints are shown to have not been upheld?
Andrea or Sarah?
Yeah, if I can come in initially, and I thank Councillor White for the question. Just to put things into perspective, and I'll use corporate building services as an example because I feel like it's a tradition for the scrutiny committee. I usually use corporate building services. So in that year, they actually carried out 70,000 repairs, and then they had 380 stage 1 and stage 2 complaints, which actually equates to 0.58% of the actual visits that they've carried out. So it's a very small percentage of the work that's been done. But I agree with the points that Councillor White has raised, that there will be certain issues which are, repetitive in terms of perhaps not getting a response, not getting a reply. And we are looking at digital systems to help us closely monitor when a repair is logged by the contact centre, when somebody goes out to carry out that repair, if there are follow-up visits required, if there's no response, and also making sure that we're interacting and communicating with the residents to make sure that they fully understand what the procedures are and what's happened. For example, if they haven't had a reply, then we'll make the tenant aware that somebody did try to call and they weren't able to gain access to carry out the repair, just as an example. And the other thing I was remiss really in my introduction. The other thing that I'm really pleased that we've included in these reporting mechanisms are the compliments, because it's very easy for us as an organisation to focus all the time on the negativity and the things that have gone wrong. But actually, I'm really pleased to see that an update to the report before members is Corporate Building Services had 36 compliments. And so it's important to recognise the good work that's being carried out by our teams on the ground. I won't say any more than that, Chair, because I'll bring Sarah in to add some more information to the response.
Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add, areas where you're likely to get those kind of complaints. So if a refuse lorry were to break down, if when you've got high areas of flooding as well, we might get significant complaints. And also where you've got parking tickets as well. That's a key area where there's a legal process to follow, but there may be times when then people aren't following that process, so they're complaining about having the parking ticket, but with a parking ticket you either have to pay or you have to dispute, but there's a proper process around that which you have to follow. So, and then sometimes enforcement agencies then will have to get involved. So that wouldn't be a justified complaint because there is a process to follow. And if the parking ticket was given in error, then by going through the process, then that would be expunged. So, there are a lot of, as you say, Councillor White, a lot of examples where, yes, the council in its running of its business and where things do happen like that, then it wouldn't be upheld. Thank you.
I was remiss in introducing this to say that the social services part of this has already been considered by the various panels, so in some detail. So I don't suppose we'll be going much into that, but just the members are aware of that as well. I've just got, these are really petty things we add to this report. The report states that in 22-23, the Ombudsman received 94 complaints but closed 99. Presumably there were 5 carried over from the previous year. Is that likely to be the case?
Yes, they do. The Ombudsman tends to have cases running over different years. So yes, although the 94 was received in that year, yeah, there's extras from previous years that then are closed over.
But it's important to note he didn't actually uphold any of those complaints against us, which I think is very important. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing was on reporting timescales. This report goes up to March 23, which is almost 12 months away. Will the next 23-24 be more timely when we get that report? I understand. I'm assuming this is down to COVID again, but it'd be useful to have it much closer to the end of the financial year.
Yes, absolutely, Chair. And it was our hope that this year we would bring it much sooner. But yes, the plan is that we will be starting now. It does take several months to gather all the information, because obviously we can get the information out of the system, but it's obviously understanding the context of the complaints that so that we can put a robust report in front of the committee. But when the Ombudsman's annual letter comes out, it's usually September, October. So our plan is to start pulling it together in April so that we're ready for when the Ombudsman letter then comes, and we can hopefully bring it September, October along with the letter, so it's all at once is our aim.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you. Francesca O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Two things really. One, Councillor Lewis actually touched upon it, was more of an observation that those frontline services that are dealing with the public on the day-to-day are going to generate complaints, and equally it's nice to see that they're balanced out with the compliments as well. So I think it's only right that we do criticise the council when it's necessary, but sometimes it can seem a thankless job, I'm sure. So it is nice when you do receive those complaints, but compliments rather. But how are the complaints logged and the compliments logged? Because I'm just wondering, you know, when we've had something going right here in our ward in Mumbles, I always like to feed back to those council officers, just sort of say, you know, thank you, it is appreciated. Does that count as a compliment, or does it have to go, is it formally from a resident in letter or email? I was just wondering how that data is collected.
The compliments are from the public, so they're not including any that would be classed as internal. So if it was a compliment from yourself or from other officers between departments, that's not included. We do put those onto StaffNet so people can see that there are internal compliments going, but in terms of this report, it's all purely from the public.
Andrea? So even if members of the public have emailed us as a council and we've had permission to pass it on, that wouldn't be logged.
Yes, if it's logged via the complaints team and on the system, then yes, it would have been logged. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Andrea. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps if I can add to that. So it would be good practice, I think, for council members. I usually, when I receive a compliment from either a member of the public or a member of the public via a member to me about the service, I always pass it on to the head of service so that it can be logged. So I think, you know, those compliments are really well received. I take the point that's been made by Councillor O'Brien. We still need to get residents' permission to pass those compliments on, but I do feel it's important to get that positive feedback, because, you know, when our council officers often are going above and beyond the call of duty, to recognise that, even just by thank you, goes such a long way. So it's really important to maintain that feedback if possible. And if it's a service which is in a cabinet member's area, I'm sure cabinet members would be more than happy to assist in passing that on to the relevant head of service.
I take it that the complaints which have been logged here have come through the website mostly, for the complaints site there. I mean, would comments be put, compliments the same way, or would you just rely on officers passing them on to the complaints team?
The complaints is a mix of people phoning and web, but most you're right. The higher percentage comes through the web forms, and compliments is a mix. So it does come via the services themselves as well as through the website and through the phone.
So we're relying on those filtering up to the chief officer and then down to the compliments team. So I imagine quite a few get lost in that process. You know, so.
And it's one of the areas. So June 23, we introduced the new complaint system, which has, you know, significantly improved performance around being able to respond quickly to stage 1 complaints. The plan is to also put all the compliments through that as well. So the system will be more streamlined. It's not going to be ready from the 1st of April, but it will be ready in the year. So it will get better. But yes, you're right. We are relying on people passing things through at the moment, but it'll be much more streamlined when we can get it onto the new system.
So the 24-25 report, I'm expecting a lot more compliments in that report. And yeah. Okay, because it's all you always report the complaints, don't you? But you don't always think about the compliments in the same way. I mean, I certainly never thought to pass on to the chief officer. I always say thank you if an officer goes above and beyond. But you know, you don't always think to send it on, do you? No. Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions at all of anybody on this? Peter May.
Yeah, Councillor O'Brien actually sort of started the train of thought I was going to ask about how these complaints and compliments were actually sourced. I'm looking at the council webpage now when it's make a complaint or a compliment. And I fully get the streamlining you're hoping to ensue for the next year. Would it be what about for example paper compliments or complaints? Because obviously we go back to not everybody uses electronic devices. I understand you've got the informal compliment that turns into a formal compliment. Would it be possible in the 2024 25 report to actually have a breakdown of the source of how these complaints and compliments have actually come in, so we can see how people are actually making them?
Sarah?
Yes, not a problem at all. Yeah, we do that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, can I thank you very much for coming and presenting the report. Again, I don't think there's much to follow up, but we'll obviously put a letter out to summarise what we talked about. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the Scrutiny Performance Panel Progress Report. This week it's Education Scrutiny Performance Panel. Now, Lyndon Jones, who is the chair of that panel, is not being able to be here because he's had to attend a very important governing meeting at Bishops and Comprehensive, which is just, of course, reopened after very catastrophic issues around there. So, I mean, that's perfectly understandable. He needs to be there rather than here. Has anybody got any questions at all on this progress report, which is in front of you? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think Lyndon did highlight, as Robert is here, Lyndon did highlight an issue regarding the partner rights, and I think Welsh Government support for that, which seems to be lagging. And this appears to be an issue with all the joint committees, which the Welsh Government has set up by statute, that their funding and stuff is not coming through as quickly. Do you aware of anything like that? Or?
Right, that could have come through the partner area scrutiny committee.
Right.
I'm not sure whether it would have come through our scrutiny committee, but certainly, we are aware of changes that are envisaged to the whole of the middle tier following the review and the ongoing review. And I think our priority is to make sure the partner area works for us and delivers the service that we want, rather than being designed elsewhere. And that it provides a standard service. Well, no, we want something that's tailored to our needs.
Is it working better than the previous partnership, do you think?
Early days yet, but I think yes, I think it is, and it's certainly moving in the right direction. But I would say it's too early to say at the moment.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Sorry to put you on the spot like that. Okay, there's no other questions on this item. I'm going to move on to membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. There are no changes to report. Thank you, Robert. No changes to report. If anybody has anything on that. So scrutiny work programme, which is the report in front of you. The next meeting is going to be on the 16th of April, and we're going to have the crime and disorder scrutiny session. So we'll have the community safety partnership in front of us, which will include the police, of course. So I'm sure you'll all be lining up lots of questions for them and of course for the community safety officers as well on how we're being policed and the various issues which arise from that. Okay, the item 11 is scrutiny letters, which are also in front of you. And item 12 is the date and upcoming scrutiny panel working group meetings. So if there's anything, anybody got anything else they want to raise? So can I thank you all very much for attending, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.